Hi, Allan here, with another Authentic Awareness Insight. Religion and space travel, colonizing other planets. Two subjects you'd think would be miles apart. You'd think. But actually, they have two things in common. They're both delusional, and they're both irresponsible. If you don't already think religion is delusional, let me ask you a question. If I told you I was an ambassador for a race of super-intelligent aliens who've been watching us for centuries and would soon be coming to Earth to solve all our problems and make our lives perfect, and I needed a donation from you to help build their temple of welcome, what would your response be? Probably two words, yeah? Yeah, right. Religion is also irresponsible because everything that happens is the will of God. If your life is all sunshine and blue skies, then God has heard your prayers. But if your life is in the toilet, it's all part of His plan. The one that's not for you to know. Space travel and colonizing other planets is delusional because in the next 50 years, it is never going to happen. And I'll explain why in a bit. If you're drinking that Kool-Aid, it's also irresponsible because basically you're saying, Earth has too many problems. Let's give it the Bronx cheer and blast off to a rock in space. Is that what you want to do? What about your barista, your supermarket cashier, your garage mechanic? Do they have their bags packed, jonesing to jump on the first shuttle to Venus? Actually, there's only three groups that are gaga for this space fantasy. The first are millionaires with more money than brains who can pony up 200 grand for a joyride to the space station so they can take selfies with the astronauts and upload it to their Instagram. The second are governments. Governments love space travel because it proves they're progressive, they're advancing, they're looking after your welfare, even though they may have to cut welfare checks to do it. But wait, there's more. There's prestige. And what could be more important to a government than prestige? Russia, first man in space. America, first man on the moon. Who will be the first country to colonize outer space? The third group, well, you've seen them on TV. They're the billionaire cowboys who love to blast themselves into space. And now they want to blast us with them. Although they haven't exactly said why, other than joyrides to the space station and space tourism, which is not and will never be sensibly priced. They say it would be good for commercial flights. Commercial flights. Carrying what? To where? To once again misquote Gertrude Stein, there is no there. But there are four things about Bezos, Branson, and Musk that might help you understand why they're drinking this Space Odyssey Kool-Aid. Number one, they all have the same disease. And yes, the Greeks did have a word for it. That word is hubris, H-U-B-R-I-S. It means an ego bigger than Mount Rushmore. An ego that imagines itself invisible, beyond and immune from criticism. Now, since these guys have all built empires on Earth, isn't it logical to assume they're going to want to build empires in space? And what better ego stroke for egos of that size than to be one of the founding fathers of New Earth, the first planet in space to be colonized. A planet without global warming, infectious diseases, crumbling infrastructure, depressed economy, terrorists, serial killers, and pedophile priests. Sounds great, doesn't it? And winning the lottery sounds great also. Yeah? You have every chance, however small, of winning the lottery, but there is no chance that the fantasies of the space cowboy billionaires are ever going to morph into reality. The second thing the space cowboys all share is they're Trekkies. They grew up in the era of Star Trek. They're hardwired to go boldly where no one has gone before, even if there's no reason to. Well, especially if there's no reason to. The third thing they have in common is they have watched Field of Dreams way too many times. Remember, build it and they will come. The fourth thing that the billionaires have in common is, you probably figured this out already, they don't live in our world. They live in the billionaire bubble, where they do what they want, when they want, and how they want. They don't have to sweat mortgages, sending the kids through college, remodeling the kitchen, or paying for Granny's hip operation. That is so not on their radar. So, how did all this space fantasy, space travel stuff start? For me, the unindicted co-conspirator is Popular Science magazine. Back in the day, they were full of predictions about how wonderful our lives would be in the future. Flying cars, monorails above the city, no traffic congestion, and flights into space. Next, comic books pumped up the volume a notch by transforming science fiction into science fantasy with the introduction of superheroes. Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, able to, well, basically do all the things we'd like to do but can't. Those ancient comic book superheroes are the ancestors of the more fantastic superheroes we see today on TV and in the movies. Okay, the time has come for me to tell you why this space fantasy is going to remain just that. But first, you need to understand that the space scientist's holy grail is to find a planet that supports life. That phrase translates as has oxygen. But here's the thing. Oxygen isn't life. Life is birds and bees and flowers and trees and fish and animals and streams and lakes and rivers and oceans and mountains and 4,000 years of human history. You're going to blast all that up to a rock in space? Hey, this is starting to sound a little bit like Noah's Ark, isn't it? Okay, let's assume in the improbable instance that a planet is found that supports life. What's next? Well, you've got to send explorers up there, right, to figure out if it's going to work. So you do that, and the explorers come back and they say, it's going to work, it's time to colonize. And what's next? You're ahead of me, aren't you? That's right. You need to find enormous amounts of money to build an enormous spaceship that'll carry 100 or so people, all their food, all their supplies, and all their water, which can't be very light, up to New Earth. Now, staying positive, assuming this gets done, and further assuming that this billion-dollar spaceship doesn't go the way of Challenger and does arrive on New Earth, and further assuming that everything works out fine, they don't get hit by meteorites, there's no infectious space virus that science had no idea existed, and a few months on, everything seems to be ticking along fine. So what have you got? You've got 100 people who have one thing and only one thing in common. They all came from planet Earth. But here's the thing. They all have different life experiences, different ethnicities, and most importantly, different religious fairy tales. Now, any shrink worth his frequent flyer miles will tell you that that is a psychological Titanic headed for the iceberg. Major intergalactic family feud, jealousy, rage, ego, anger, homophobia, xenophobia, sexism, racism. Basically, all the same things that a similar group of people would face here on Earth. Progress. You gotta love it, right? There's an old Elvis song you might remember. The title is Clean Up Your Own Backyard. And that's just what mankind needs to do now. We need to go boldly where no one has gone before and fix what can be fixed on this planet. Buying into the fantasies of megalomaniac space cowboy billionaires is not going to do it. Until next time, this is Allan reminding you to be good to each other, especially the space cowboy billionaires. Because in spite of their fantasies, I think they'd agree we're all in this together.